Joining us now for his first interview after receiving a pardon from Donald Trump is filmmaker, author, New York Times bestseller, Dinesh D'Souza. He has a new movie coming out, Cannot Wait, in August. Talk about that as well. Dinesh, thanks for being with us. Congratulations, if that's the right word, but you must be totally relieved.
Yes, I'm relieved and elated and excited. I actually got the call yesterday from the White House, and it kind of came as a bolt from the blue. Hold for the President of the United States, and we had a 10-minute conversation, and basically President Trump said, I'm signing this in the morning, it's a done deal. And he said, you got shafted by those guys. You did something that should have gotten a slap on the wrist, a minor fine, and they went after you hammer and tong. And I'm going to set that right and clear your record so that you can be the powerful voice for America that you've been for so long.
Now, did someone apply for a pardon on your behalf or bring the issue to the president?
Well, a number of people around Trump have been pitching this, and there on social media there is a person who was collecting signatures from people to make a petition to the White House, and so there were these various efforts going on. I think a critical effort was actually done by Senator Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz approached Trump directly about it and sort of brought the case to the forefront, and I'm sure that they reviewed the file at that point and did the normal legal procedures that they go through. So I owe a special debt of gratitude to Ted Cruz for pressing my case.
The underlying issue and conviction was about campaign contributions you gave to our mutual friend, Senate candidate Wendy Long in New York. And I guess the total amount was $20,000, and I guess you promised to reimburse family members and so forth for the contributions. And Preet Bharara was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and is a very vociferous critic also of President Trump. Do you think that played into this at all, or is this just based on the absurd nature of this 5-year probation term that you got from the Southern District?
Well, in terms of the penalty, I did my 8 months of confinement a couple of years ago, but I was under a 5-year, not just a probation, but also community service, 1 day a week for 5 years. And that's very difficult to do if you're trying to live a productive life or even hold down a normal job. Now, with regard to Preet Bharara, I see him as, along with Eric Holder, as sort of part of this Obama team of goons, if you will, that was unleashed to get me in retaliation for the movie I made about Obama. And I think Bharara's ambition was that he would prove that by getting a fellow Indian, he would kind of endear himself to the Obama team. So it was a move of ambition, as I understand it. But, this would have to file this into the Karma is a Bitch department. Preet Bharara got fired by Trump, and I got pardoned. So that's how it all ended up.
Preet fired and Dinesh pardoned. That's excellent. Well, look, you went through hell. I mean, I remember interviewing you during this whole process. So many times you came on the show and came on television as well, and discussing what you saw in this confinement. You would have to... Didn't you have to sleep? Did you have to sleep there? It was in San Diego, right? You had to sleep there during the week, and then you could, I can't remember. You had some pretty unsavory characters next to you, as I recall.
Yeah, what happens is, in order to enable people who have served long prison sentences to become accustomed to living back in society, they typically transition into these so-called halfway houses. So they're quite dangerous places because you sleep in an open dorm with 120 criminals, typically of all types of sentences, from drug convictions to murder and so on, and these guys are there for typically 60 to 90 days before they are let out back on the street, having served their time. So it's a dicey type of environment, and it's something that the judge made me endure, and I went through it, and I think in a way, morally and temperamentally, I've come out stronger for it. So these things have a sort of providential way of working out. but I'm very relieved to have my record clean. I mean, in a way, this fully restores my faith in America, my American dream. Something is hanging over you when you have the United States of America versus Dinesh D'Souza, and that is now gone.
The weekly counseling sessions that you had to do, Dinesh, tell us a little bit about those. This whole thing was so ridiculous. What happened?
I did the mandatory counseling for, I think it was about a year and a half. And the funny thing was that, I think the judge's idea was that I would somehow be quote, rehabilitated, but by which I think he meant made to see the light. But I think he realized after a year and a half that I was, in a
hopeless,
sense, incorrigible. And so he canceled the sessions. He goes, there's nothing good is coming out of these. And so those were suspended a while ago.
So that was like a mini re-education camp that you just flopped out of. You would not become a Preet Bharara without a law degree. They wanted you to kind of understand just how your days going back to Dartmouth College, it was all wrong, and you suddenly see, yes, so thank you, sir, may I have another? That's ridiculous.
No, it's I think this is a very sad. I mean, what my case shows in miniature is the way that Obama and Hillary too have gangsterized the U.S. politics. Because if you think back, it's really unimaginable that, say, Jimmy Carter, he would no more dream of locking me up or targeting me than either of the Bushes would dream of doing the same to Michael Moore or even Rosie O'Donnell. But there's a new turn that's come in American politics, and Trump is, I think, very well aware of it. In some ways, he's the product of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he feels like he's the subject now. He's the target. You were a target in a much smaller case, which obviously wasn't small to you personally, and now he feels like a lot of these same characters who were in power when they did that to you are now, they want to undo the election. They want to use the full power of the federal government to try to undo an election, and they're kind of being found out for what they've done.
I mean, look at a small example. The Congressional Oversight Committee was trying to get my file, and the FBI kept saying, "We can't give it to you because it's an ongoing case, even though the case was over. It had been resolved. The outcome, so they refused to turn the file over. Well, eventually, the Congressional Oversight Committee got my file, and now we see why the FBI was withholding it, because inside the file it goes, Dinesh D'Souza is a prominent critic of the Obama. So in other words, the FBI is signaling to the Holder Justice Department, we got one for you. We found a guy who's a political enemy. So if you guys want to go after him, he's ready for the takedown. So this is in my file, and so this is the kind of corruption that's been going on. And in a case, in a way, I feel that my case is a sort of small miniature of larger forces that we see in other areas with Trump going on in the rest of the country.
Dinesh D'Souza, I could not be happier for you, your family. It is just, it's about time. And Donald Trump, I think there's a lot of other people who deserve pardons. Conrad Black, one of them. Another person put in jail by Patrick Fitzgerald, a total fraud of a prosecution. But this was long overdue. Dinesh, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. I can't wait to see your film. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks as well. Dinesh D'Souza on The Laura Ingraham Show.